Today we're going to start talking about chapter 27. Okay, as part of the sequence, we've been looking at, we've looked at labor and capital and how we use those to be productive and increase our GDP. We looked at how we measure GDP. Now we're starting to look at what we're going to do with capital. We've looked at labor and we're going to look at labor again. We've looked at human capital and physical capital. We're going to look at finance. How do we raise the money that we use to purchase capital? Understand there's a difference between capital and money. We use money to create capital. It's kind of a misnomer sometimes in society because we talk about, oh, I'm going to go out and raise some capital. And we're talking about money. No, we're engaged in finance to get the money to buy the capital. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here in chapter 27. Okay? 25 looked at capital, labor, and their effect on output. 26, we looked at savings and investment in capital and how that creates it. Now, in 27, what do we use? What tools do people use to raise money besides savings and investment? Okay, we got savings and investment, and then we've got finance. Okay, it's a nice picture if you're following along. I forget why I've got Dirty Harry in there. Okay. What is the purpose of financial markets? To bring together people who have money to save and people who need money for capital purposes. Okay? Essentially what we're talking about here, we call them financial intermediaries. Banks act as financial intermediaries. They bring together people who put money in accounts and people who want to borrow. Also, the stock market acts as a financial intermediary. Insurance companies act as financial intermediaries. Mutual funds, financial intermediaries, okay? When we're talking finance, we want to talk about time and risk, and they're closely related, okay? We're going to have some decisions we have to make when we're investing money. What are our expectations? What problems do these decisions present? Well, we're going to see this, have seen it. We've watched a video on Shylock and Antonio in Merchant of Venice. Shylock and Antonio are going back and forth. What are they saying? How long do you need the 3,000 ducats? And what's the rate? The interest rate is the cost of borrowing money. That's what they're going back and forth on. On a real elementary level, we talk about what are the expectations of future earnings, and that's going to be based on time and risk. The higher the risk, the more earnings we expect back. The longer the time, the more earnings we expect back if we lend. Okay? How do we limit our risk? That's always what we want to do. We want to keep our risk down so that our return is higher. We always want to limit risk. And that's a lot of what this is about. How do we manage risk? Okay? And then we're going to look and see how do we use these concepts? How do we compare sums of money at different points in time? We got to be able to do that in order to figure out, because if I got $1 now, it's not the same as $1 10 years in the future. We've seen that already, the impact of inflation. How do we calculate values of money going forward and back, and how do we manage risk? That's what chapter 27 is all about. Okay. Now, the time value of money, we are talking about the present value, the amount today that would be needed at current interest rates to produce some sum in the future. So if I've got $1 today and I want $10 in the future, and this is my interest rate, how long does it take to get that? Okay? Or we can go backwards, the amount of money in the future that an amount of money today will yield for us given present interest rates. Now this is obviously going to be very important for somebody who's doing like a pension. Okay? If I'm planning for the future, how much money do I need to put back? You guys see advertisements on TV all the time. How much money do you think you need to live at age 70? That's what this is about, present value. So, how do we compute present value? Okay? Got to know this. If R is the present interest rate, and we always express that in a decimal, N is going to be our years to maturity. PV is going to be present value, and FV is the future value. Okay? And we're going to anticipate compounding, because from year to year, if I put $10 in the bank today, is that going to be $10 next year? No, it's going to be $10 plus whatever interest rate it earned over that time period. So then in year 2, I'm not calculating based on $10. I'm calculating based on, if it was 10%, $11 now, and so on and so forth. This is called compounding, and eventually what happens in year 3, the interest that I earned in year 1 going into year 2, I'm going to earn interest on that interest. That's what compounding is, earning interest on the interest. So, if I want to calculate that, my present value multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate, okay, I'm sorry, divided by 1 plus the interest rate multiplied by the years to maturity. So if I've got something that's going to take 10 years to mature, I would plug that in here. 1.05 here. That I can get my future value. I know 10 years from now, okay? Here's what it's going to be worth. And if I flip that over, if I need $100 in the future, how much money do I need to deposit now? Well, that depends. I'm going to divide that by 1 plus the interest rate multiplied by the number of years. That's going to give me, this will be multiplied, this will be divided, and that will give me my present value. Okay? So that's how I figure a future value and a present value of a future sum. So I can use this to say how much money do I need to deposit at such and such a rate for how long. And I use this to say I have this much now, how much will that be worth in the future if I have a set number of years and a given interest rate. Okay? Compounding. That's a tool we use in finance. Now, here's an example. We're going to deposit $100 in an account bearing interest rate at 7% for 3 years. What's our return? Or, what if we're offered a bank deposit that provides us with $122.50 3 years from now? Is that a good deal? If the interest rate is 7%, what do I have to pay for that account today? The finding of the present value and the sum is called discounting. Okay? And we'll be doing some of that in our homework. We're going to work through problems on this, so you'll see exactly how to do it. Okay. What do we know about the relationship of present and future values? Here's the key. If I receive a sum in the present, that's preferable to receiving some in the future. Why? Because I can use it now to make more later. In order to choose between two sums, the present value or the future value, I have to find the present value of the larger future sum and compare it with the value today. If it's less than the value today, I don't want that deal. If it's more than the value today, good deal, I go with it. Firms do this all the time. If I've got a present value of the future return, if that exceeds the cost, I'm not going to do it. Or I will do it. I will undertake the investment if the present value exceeds the cost. the present value of the future. Okay, if that exceeds my present cost, go with it. The larger the interest rate, the less likely it is that the project will be undertaken. Why? Because the present value is going to exceed the future return. Okay? The larger interest rate, the less likely the project will be undertaken. Present value becomes smaller. Interest rates rise, investment declines. Now, small differences in a growth rate can make enormous differences in an income after many years because of compound growth. We just talked about this. Each year's growth is based on the previous year's accumulated growth. So we earn interest on the interest. Now, here's another tool, the rule of 70. If a variable grows at a rate of X% per year, its value will double in approximately 70 over X years. So, if my income grows at 1% per year, 70 over 1, how long does it take to double? 70 years. Okay? What if it grows at 4%? 70 divided by 4. That'll tell me how long it takes to double. So, what, 17 approximately? I don't know off the top of my head, but you get the idea. Okay? That's the rule of 70. All I got to do, 70 over X. What's the percentage rate? That tells me how long it will take to double what I've got. Okay? Now, most people don't like risk. Okay? We are risk averse by nature. Nobody wants to go in and see how close they can get their hand to the cooking stove and see how close they can get without getting burnt. No, I'll stay way over here. My hand won't go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to burn myself. Okay? I'd rather have good things happen to me instead of bad things. Why? Because everyone wants to get the most utility. The utility lost from losing a $100 bet is greater than the utility gained by winning the bet. I had the $100. If I get another $100, that extra $100 is only marginally more to me than the first 100. Okay? But if I lose that, now I got nothing. So it was marginally, the second $100 is not as marginally important to me as the first $100. So everybody tries to limit their risk because we all operate at the margins. How do we do this? First of all, we buy insurance. Secondly, we diversify. Thirdly, we will accept a lower return because a lower return means lower risk. How does insurance work? We're going to spread risk through a large number of people. It's a lot easier for 100 people to bear 1/100th of the risk of losing a house. It's a lot easier for me over the years to pay a premium, pay a premium, pay a premium, pay a premium, pay a premium a little bit. And then if I wreck my car, I don't have to pay the $20,000 or $30,000 to replace the car. It's a lot easier to pay that $300-400 every year than it is to come up with the 30 or 40, 20 to 40 that I got to have to buy the new car. So it's more efficient. And we spread the risk over a wider group of people. That's how insurance works. Now, if I've got 50 people living in a town, the house burns down. Each person has a 1 in 50 chance of losing his entire home in a given year. So we have everybody pay 1/50th of the value of their home into a fund, and after 50 years, they would have the value of the home there for them. The alternative is to go bare, but replace your house. The cost is the same, but risk-averse people choose to buy insurance because there's a reduction in utility from paying one time a year as opposed to all of it at once. The problem with insurance is we have two kinds of people out there. Two problems. One is adverse selection. If a person is sick, they're more likely to buy health insurance than the healthy person. What's the problem with that? They're also more likely to do what? Make a claim. I want more healthy people in my pool because they're less likely to make a claim. That's one of the big problems that's happened with Obamacare. We're not getting enough young people in there signed up. That's why there's been a big push to get young people to sign up for national health care so that they can drive down the risk and get their money also. Okay? If I'm a risky driver, I'm more likely to buy insurance than a person who's a safe driver. The safe driver says, I've never had a wreck. Why should I do this? Of course they do it because they're required to by law. That's why you have the law, because of adverse selection. The other problem is moral hazard. Now, I've gone out and I've got the car insurance, but because the car insurance, I say, oh, I'm safe now, so I won't buy, I won't be as careful. An example of this working is when we started to require the wearing of safety belts in cars. What happened was fatalities went down, but wrecks increased. Fatalities went down because people were protected from the risks associated with having their aorta slam right into the steering wheel. And at the same time, though, because they felt safe, they drove less carefully. Classic example of the problem of a moral hazard. Now, we just talked about that. We talked about that. If I'm healthy, maybe I don't have it. If I have insurance, I don't have as much incentive to maintain a healthy lifestyle. The other problem with health insurance in our system is it usually only covers routine expenses, things that we pay for when we go to the doctor's office. Now we're finished with this part of my lecture. You're going to go ahead. I have given you your packet, take it home, and I want you to do the practice problems. You bring the practice problems back completed. That will be the acknowledgement that you did this part of the assignment. If you want to do the rest of it, that's fine, but I need to see the practice problems because we're going to go over there. So there's some rule of 70 stuff and some future value, present value calculations in there, all right? Have a good Saturday. I'll see you.